That's not going to be a critical thing, but it will be you will need to be addressing it over the course of the next year or so. Today, we're going to speak a lot about setting a direction for the club. This is a process that is continuous, and we'll be doing that. And of course, we have a tip of the month, which is something we'd like to institute, that even though we're not speaking about a specific skill set or computer use today, we thought we'd have something that would be useful for that. So, Jim, that's yours.
Okay. I'm on tip of the month. So what I'd like to cover this month is voice dictation. And I don't know if anybody has dictated in the past, but when I was working, I would dictate, and it would go something like, you'd give a sentence, and then you'd say period, new paragraph, capital, and it would start off, you know, with your dictation. Well, today, we're in light years ahead of that. Dictation uses AI. And if you speak into any device, it can be your phone, your tablet, your computer, all of them will recognize voice dictation. And it's so much easier than typing. So, with that said, I'd like to give a little demonstration of what I use. Bear with me a second. Okay. Now, again, AI, you can use ChatGPT, you can use Google's Gemini, you can use Microsoft's Copilot, or I found an app or a thing I downloaded called WhisperFlow. And WhisperFlow goes on any device, on your iPhone, or on your Android phone, or in your computer, and you can dictate it, and it is intelligent. So I'm going to give you an example now using WhisperFlow, and hopefully this is going to work. Okay, this is a sleep study checklist. Important, your sleep center is where you will have your sleep study. See your sleep medical provider or pick up your home sleep test equipment. Midwest Dental Sleep Center is not your sleep center. Step 1, expect a notification. You will receive a text and a voice message within 1 to 2 business days with your sleep center's contact information. Step 2, follow up with your sleep center. Call your sleep center in 2 weeks to ensure your referral has been processed and to schedule your sleep study. Step 3, notify Midwest Dental Sleep Center. Once your sleep study is scheduled, call us at 312-676-9892. Okay, I'm going to make this, I tried to format that larger first, but let's go ahead and make that a bit bigger. Sorry about this. Well, I'm not successful, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but I think you get the gist of of what this can do. It's gone ahead and put the steps, it's capitalized. In the second one, I purposely made a mistake, and it corrected that mistake. If anybody is interested in learning more about AI voice dictation, come on up here after this meeting. I'll be happy to show you how you can put it on your device and work with you to get it set up. I know some of us in the computer club have been really taken with it. It's a whole lot easier than typing. I default to typing but with my finger, but I think it has a lot of advantages for us. So that said, we're going to go ahead and continue on with our presentation. Okay.
Thanks, Jim. By the way, I was also using dictation quite a bit while I was working. And after I dictated something using something called Dragon Systems, it was a special app, then I would have to go back in and correct things and put in punctuation and capitalize different things. And it was a bit laborious, but it was very, very handy. Now you can just say those things and it'll correct 99% of the things right on the spot. So it's really good. Ken Zazinski would like to say something about Windows 10. So yes, so Ken, come on up.
Good morning. We're getting very close to the deadline for Windows 10. It's October 14th, which is only, what, 5 days? And it's a pretty big deal, really. Some people say no, but hackers watch these things. They know holes that are in Windows, all the security holes. And there's a lot of them still in there that Microsoft hasn't fixed. Any operating system has holes in it. So the hackers are waiting. And when Microsoft says, okay, we're not fixing anything anymore, the hackers are going to unleash some of these attacks. So it's advisable to get off of Windows 10. Or now I did find a way to get their extended support for free. You go into Windows Update, and there's something that says enroll now. And I clicked on that, and on this lady's computer I was working on, it said, you know, well, you're backing up your Windows settings and things to Microsoft, so you get it free for a year. So I said, okay, so I clicked on that, and yeah, she got it free for 1 year. So she's good until October 14th of 2026. So there may be a way for you to extend your Windows 10 support for another year. Me, I would get off of it and just get Windows. If your computer won't take Windows 11, you're looking at buying a new computer. But it'll last you a long time. It'll be a lot faster than what you've got. Because what you've got is probably pretty old. So I think you should really consider that. That's fine.
Could you repeat what you did? What is the step?
Oh, I just went to Windows Update. And then about halfway down the screen it says enroll now. It talks about the extended support. And just clicked on enroll now. And then it said, well, you're backing up your settings to Microsoft, so we're going to give you that for free. And it says continue, and I just clicked on continue and it said, okay, you've got it for another year.
I wanted to mention that on one of the texts, and,
It's really loud, Jerry, so everybody can hear.
Jerry, in one of the texts, and I want to say that a lot of people have come in with us because they realize that they run the tool that Microsoft Agent says, I can't run the Windows 11. So they need help.
Jerry, they can't hear you.
I hear you. We're old. What'd you say, Eric? So,
Here we go. Okay, so I'm Jerry, I'm one of the techs, and a lot of people have been coming in with their PC, trying to say, I need a little help determining if it runs on Windows 11. You've already done it at home, maybe. We could actually help you look at the PC, kind of help make sure that it's, upgradable or not. And then if you need some help figuring out, well, these guys have an opinion about what PCs to get and ones to stay away from. So wherever it's worth, we're in the lab and we can make, come on in on Monday or Thursday or whenever we get our new dates out. So, thank you.
Yeah, don't be afraid about buying a new computer. When I moved into my home a few years ago, they said, well, your air conditioning system was original and may last another 3 or 4 years. But the Freon is not being manufactured again. I said, screw it. Let's just get a new one because it's going to outlive me. So look upon this as maybe buying, my wife hates it when I say this, but you may be buying your last computer. So, but make it a decent one that's going to last a while. And your life will be easier. Just bite the bullet and get it done. Okay. Additionally, we are going to experiment with more hours. So I beginning next week.
No, I'll cover that.
You'll cover that. Okay, so you'll cover that later. Okay, so let's move on to the program. Recently there was a survey done. We had the benefit of Richard Che, who has a professional expertise in doing surveys, and it's a good time to report to the membership about who you are. So here's a profile of the club and its priorities. We're going to follow that up with a report from a meeting we had, open meetings for members to come in and talk about their needs and strategic vision, and also another meeting we had with the lab techs about their experiences. So we're going to cover a lot of ground that is about the foundational information, the core information that's leading us to develop a strategic plan that we hope to bring back to you shortly. So I'm going to turn this over to Richard Che for his report on the survey.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Two bits of housekeeping. First of all, is if you've got a smartphone in front of you, if you can put it on silent, that'd be a good thing to do so that you don't disturb your neighbor. And the other thing is, as I go through the presentation, I'm going to ask that we not have questions during the presentation because that might slow us down a bit. This is about a 25-minute slideshow that I'm going to go through with you, and you can hold your questions until the end. That would, and we even answer them as we go along the way here. So, with those two things, let's get started. The survey methodology was fairly simple and straightforward. And that is, Shelley had sent out an email invitation to the entire club, to all 1,240 member email addresses that we had. And they went out on September 10th, and then he sent out a reminder email a few days later. And what happened was we ended up getting back an astonishing 302 surveys from the membership, and that's a really high response rate. That's 25%, and that's really good, and we can consider that reasonably representative of the membership of the club. For reference, though, it's important to note that the surveys that First Service Residential does of all of you who live in the community, they only get a 14% response rate. So this just suggests how engaged so many of you were in filling out the survey. It certainly helps because it gives us a lot more people to look at and feel comfortable in some of the conclusions that we've drawn from the results so far. So the survey asked about three essential areas. One is the computer lab, the was some questions about members themselves. So what I'm going to do is walk through a couple of charts that will kind of give you the highlights, the key takeaways. Then I'm going to show you some data, some tables to take a look at so you can see how we came up with those conclusions. And then I'll wrap it up at the end in terms of the kind of insights and ideas that came from completing the survey. So the first thing was that we asked about was what people would like by way of improvements in the computer lab. And CL throughout the presentation deck stands for computer lab. And what you asked for were more days of the week, being open evenings, or even the possibility of making an appointment, and much less so about equipment, because it's not the equipment that we have in the lab, it's the service that can be provided to you when you come in and need help. And as I look around, I see a number of familiar faces, people that I've helped over the few years I've been involved, and you know how important that is, so you're looking for expanded service capability. When you were asked in the survey to select items that to have in the computer lab, nothing really popped out as, wow, we gotta go and buy this thing because that's what we really need. You didn't say that in the survey, okay? The other thing is that respondents in the survey report that they largely visit the lab for help with computer problems or advice about their applications and their programs. That's the main reason you come. Now, some of the people who come more regularly than others, you know that we have a lot of other gear in the lab that you can use. And I'll talk about that shortly. And there's also what we identified in the survey. There's a core group of about 20% of respondents that use the computer lab frequently, meaning once a month or even more often than that. And you, of course, those of you who do that know who you are. Those of you who are less frequent know who you are as well. So the key insights coming out of questions about the Drendel meeting were as follows: that most of you have attended a meeting in Drendel and are pleased with the quality of the presentations that you see. And I'll show you some data on that shortly. About a third of the people here indicate that they attend most or all of the monthly meetings. And that's a pretty impressive bit of information as well, that there are a lot of you who are sort of frequent flyers, people who like to come for what happens here, presentations, as well as coffee and donuts. And we found that we asked directly about coffee and donuts because there was a question about that. Let's see how I looked at it at first and then see what I came up with as a conclusion. But coffee and donuts are important to our most frequent Drendel attendees. The other thing that was, I think, pretty interesting is that how engaged all of you are in the club. And that is, this high response rate for the survey was terrific. Nearly all of you have either come to the computer lab or you've come to the monthly meeting. That's terrific. And about 30 people out of the 300, when asked, hey, can you help out in the computer lab? We'll train you, we'll provide the coaching and counseling to do that. 30 people, actually 28, wrote their names in. And if some of you are people who did that, are actually being contacted and confirming that we have some new people who can come into the lab and participate in the lab experience. So that's, again, suggesting to me that all of you are really into this stuff. And that's really encouraging based on the survey results. The insights on the members are fairly straightforward, and that is that the technology adoption is high. I think a number of you probably think that you're not real knowledgeable or you're not really into this stuff, but what we see in the data here suggests to me that you actually are far more engaged with the technology than I would have expected. And that is, we know that tablets were at the top of the list of things that you have at home, followed by laptops and desktops. iPhones only slightly over Android phones. And with regard to workstations, Windows dominates over Apple. We certainly know that in the lab based on who comes to see us and the kinds of questions that you have. And then less so, but notable that a number of you checked having home automation tools, either the garage door opener or the Ring doorbell or Alexa or Google Home. Those kinds of things were the sort of things that people checked that they actually looked at and had at home. Finally, when we asked about how people use their computer at home, they said that it was for searches, for email, as well as finance and productivity apps. And I'll come to some important implications about that. The number of people who are continuing to use their computers that way suggests that we need to do an even better job to remind you on how to be safe, how to not get yourself in trouble and get hacked or visit a place on the web that can cause you some difficulty. So let's talk about the computer lab. Let me show you the first chart, and I'll talk to you about how this actually is laid out, because every chart I'm going to show you is going to show the same thing. In each case, what I've done is at the top is I put a conclusion about the question that we asked. In each case, I've shown you, I wonder if it's working. Yes, it is. So right there, so up there I've indicated how often do you visit the computer lab and Mediview Lodge. So that's an example of the question that we asked. And then those are the alternatives that were in the survey. And then those are the percentages that reported each of those items in the survey. And what we concluded from just doing a simple summary of the data, about 20%, that's 1 in 5 of you, are people who are what we would call frequent visitors to the computer lab. Another 50% or so, that number going to moderate. And then 28% of you are what we call light users of the computer lab. And if you think about sort of your normal bell-shaped curve, a smaller group of people on this end, a smaller group of people on that end, sort of everybody in the center, and that's kind of a typical profile for this kind of question. We then asked people what computer problems. We asked people, think of the past few times that you've been to the computer lab. Why were you there? And the top of the list, as we certainly know, those of us who work in the lab, that repairing, troubleshooting problems with the computer, 48% reported that. Advice on specific programs and applications, 38%, and then it drops off fairly quickly into the 20s and then down into the single digits for things like learning new software, recycling equipment, because we will recycle equipment for you, making digital files, and setting up a new computer. Those are the kinds of things that you check off and get an idea of the fact that most of the people are coming to the lab for advice about their computers. Busy chart. What I looked at here, I wanted to find out, was there a difference between sort of the frequent visitors, that's the second column. Let's see if I can highlight that here. In the second column, those are the people who come frequently. Next column over, those are people who come moderately, and those are the light visitors to the computer lab. And you can look across and see the differences. On the main items, there's not a big difference between those of you who come frequently and those of you who come hardly at all to the computer lab. About half of you seem to say that. But as you look down, getting advice on specific applications and programs seem to be something that is more likely among the more frequent visitors to the computer lab than the less frequent visitors to the lab. Interesting as well, it looks like the lighter visitors to the computer lab here, learning new software, how to use my device in class, slightly higher among the light users. And this may be the group of people that's more likely to sign up for a class that were having a particular piece of software or a particular application. Then you can look across and see the differences. There aren't a lot of differences worth pointing out, but when you look at here, if you see people who have been to the computer lab frequently, generally speaking, all those numbers are higher than the people who come less often. And I think that's because people who come frequently recognize that there are a lot of things that we have in the lab that we can do for you that involve technology. And so and I think that's what happens. People come to the lab a lot and think, oh, I'm going to use this and use that, and people use that equipment far more often than that. So we asked people, how can the computer lab and Mediview Lodge be improved? Select as many of these as apply. And what jumped out very clearly is that it's service issues. The top item on the list is open more days than Monday and Thursday. 63% be able to make an appointment, so I don't have to wait for help. But about half open some evenings. And then, the other thing's going to drop off. We asked about larger screens, not a big deal for people. More powerful computers. This is a computer club. We got a lot of computer people who work in the lab, and we had some expectation that people were maybe looking for, bigger, better, faster equipment. That's certainly not something that you're interested in. It's really the issue of service. The human element is really important to all of you. The other thing we wanted to ask about in the lab is those of you who come to the lab, know that we have 16, I'll call them workstations there. They're for classroom use or for use by those of us who are techs who want to access something on the computer while we're helping you with one of your particular problems or issues. And we heard that some people complained that there were issues of glare, the way the glass tops, so we asked about it in the survey. And a couple of interesting things here. First of all, that half of you who come to the lab have not used a computer in the lab. And why is that? Well, because you actually bring your own computer to the lab most of the time when you're coming in, rather than coming into the lab to use a lab computer. But again, those who are those who have used a desktop computer lab, it's a minor issue for glare in terms of it being a problem that people can't see. So it turned out to be not an issue that we thought was something that people were interested and concerned about. We asked the question here, this is number 8, some of the things listed below are in the computer lab. Now others might be in the future. If the following were provided to you in the computer lab, which would you use? Select as many as apply. Interestingly as well, that a third of the people didn't check anything. They just, down here at the bottom, selected nothing on the list. So you just, those of you who did the survey, just skipped on to the next question, didn't check anything. Of the 2/3 of the people who selected something, that's this group of the 300 here, 3D printer came up to the top of the list, but only at 27%, only a quarter of the people said that they get a 3D printer. Desktop computer, we have them in the lab that people could have access to, but largely we don't. So 26% said that artificial intelligence, you could read down the rest of the list here, large format printer, an Android or iPad, a tablet, a laptop computer, a virtual reality headset, a gaming PC. Virtually no one had an interest in a gaming PC in the lab. So it gave us an idea of what are the kinds of things that people might be interested in coming to the lab to use if they, in fact, were available. Some insights into club members before we talk about the Drendel experience. We asked what you had at home now. So what was your home inventory? And what this is the very first question in the survey. And it's interesting to me that the tablets, whether they were iPads or Androids, half of you, slightly over half, have one of those. If you look at iPhones versus Android phones, let's see, it's down here. So it's sort of a 50-50 split, 53% saying an iPhone, 46% Android phone. Laptop, Windows versus laptop, Mac. Clearly, Windows prevails there. Smart home accessories, I mentioned that in the summary at the very beginning. You know, what do you have there? A lot of you seem to have those devices as well. And then down to the Apple Mac, as well as the lowest thing in the list was a Chromebook. So you have a lot of gear. You have a lot of things that you're using and working with. In fact, in a slide or two, I'll show you something else that was pretty interesting. This is an important slide because there was wide agreement on how home computers are used for the tasks that you use them. And that is internet browsing and email was the top of the list, which we would expect that you using a computer that way. Online banking, paying bills or managing investments, a fairly high level as well. Word processing or spreadsheets. And then things drop off fairly quickly from there. Slightly over a third, some photo editing, video streaming, not as many as I would have expected. People are using their computers to watch video of one kind or another, playing games, listening to music, and genealogy research and the other things drop off to fairly small levels as we go along here. We also asked you to kind of self-identify as to what you thought your level of experience and knowledge is currently. And we classify yourself as beginner, intermediate, advanced, or expert. And there's about 2/3 of you indicated that you saw yourself as an intermediate user, meaning comfortable with most functions and can figure out new tasks with some effort. Now, I don't know if the emphasis should be on with some effort in that line, or I can figure it out. But clearly 2/3 of you saw yourself as an intermediate user. And as we get into programming, the kinds of things that the club can do by way of classes and things, it reminds all of us that what we should consider is with those people who are beginners have a different set of needs and wants and interests in what they would like to see for themselves. And those people are going to be different from the intermediate or even the advanced users in the club. So our programming can begin to take shape based on who the people are in the club and the kind of things that they'd be interested in. This is one thing that really surprised me. When I designed the survey, one of the checks that we had was to be sure that the survey, excuse me, to be sure that the to be sure that the survey can actually be done with a handheld device. I had no idea how many people would choose to do the survey on the phone because the phone is a small screen and some of these questions have fairly long lists. But look at that. More than half of you use a handheld device. 44% of you use your smartphone, and another 14% use your tablet. And very few of you, went to the computer lab. We offered that as help. 3 or 4 people did. But fewer of you use the desktop computer and the laptop computer. Again, the conclusion I draw from this is that you are far more technology oriented and far more skilled in those kinds of areas than average. And because I think if you did a survey of a national audience, you might not see this kind of profile. Again, knowing what you have at home by way of your devices and how you're using them, and this fact, I think was a significant takeaway from the survey results. So now we come to kind of begin to wrap things up, the monthly meeting in general. So we had some questions about that. And the question was, whether or not we should have more of these kinds of meetings, less of these meetings, or have them be about the same. And if you take a look at the distribution here, well, first of all, we can highlight is that is 86%, 85% of the people interviewed indicated that they've ever been to a monthly meeting. Again, given that the number of people who have been to the computer lab is also about 90%, so 80 or 90% of the people in the club are engaged with the monthly meetings or are also engaged with coming to the computer lab. If we look at the frequency with which you come to the meetings, there's a core group of you who come every month. There's another group who come to most of the monthly meetings. There are a few of you who say sometimes, and then another third say rarely. So if you look at these groups, oops, I'm not going to do that. We also asked what the frequency with which, this is the frequency with which people would like to have the meetings. A few people wanted more, a few people wanted less, but virtually 3/4 of the people said the same number of meetings per month would be just about right in terms of what you want. Then some of you said, I really don't care one way or the other. We also asked people to rate the monthly meetings in terms of the quality of the information. What you see here on this chart, 40%, the top box say excellent, another 48%, totally nearly 90% saying excellent or good. And of course, there's a few people who, in any rating of any organization or session, would say fair or poor. But largely, a good deal of satisfaction with what people are getting out of the monthly meetings. Now, to the culinary experience that the Computer Club offers here every month. The question we had was, talking to observe before each meeting in general, how important are coffee and donuts to you? Extremely important. And then I really did not care one way or the other about coffee and donuts. And I looked at this, I said, it's like a 50-50 split. It's like a toss-up, you know. I think the computer club leadership can, you know, can make this call one way or the other. And I thought, I'm not sure. I'm convinced that I'm reading this exactly right. So what I did is, as you do with good cross-tag data, is you look at different groups of people to see if different groups of people have different views about the culinary experience called coffee and donuts. And so what you see here is I have a number of people who come every month, and that's you know, roughly 10%, 29. And you have people who come often, 65 of them, 36 sometimes, and some rarely. If you look at how important coffee and donuts are, the people who come every month or come often are way high on that. It's like 70, 80%, 70%. It's the people who don't come very often who don't care about the coffee and donuts. So clearly, this culinary experience that we offer here is very important to you. So that was another important finding coming out of our survey. Maybe I should say the end right now and be done. A couple more slides to go through. So wrapping this all up and kind of summarizing and drawing some conclusions and some insights from this, here's the following. The Computer Club is clearly a service organization based on why people come to the computer lab and what improvements that they'd like to see there. We gave a long list of things that they were interested in. Things didn't pop to the top of the list. What popped to the top of the list? And the different question was more days per week, weeknights perhaps, being able to make a reservation. Those are the kinds of things that seem to pop to all of you. Many of the members see yourself as experienced at this intermediate group, about 2/3 of you. So the question it raises, at least for me, is, you know, how can different levels of expertise guide either what we offer in the computer lab or what we present in the monthly meetings? Because a lot of times when you're putting together something, you've got to sort of target for some group. If you're targeting for the average, you run the risk of having some people say, it just wasn't interesting enough for me or informative, or some people saying, it's too much information I can't deal with. So as we think about programming going forward into the new year, this is something we'll need to keep in mind, that there are these different segments of you in the population. The other couple of things are that the computer lab and the monthly meeting are the real, I think, only touch points that we have. You know, I don't think I've ever been invited to a computer club picnic at the pavilion, right? We don't have those other kinds of social things. It's the lab, it's the monthly meetings that are important. So how do we make the very best of all those two touch points that we have, because we don't have others that we're looking at. The other thing is that in the computer lab, that member interest is far more in service and not so much on equipment or technology. And again, the implication for me was that it's the human element that's so much more important than technology, at least from what you said in the survey. And then the monthly journal meetings can be, again, the presentations and content even have even more focus on providing terrific content and presentations, because this is an important place that many of you come on a very regular basis. And then based on the number of completed surveys, the number of people who volunteered, those 20 to 30 people who said, I'd like to come work in the computer lab, and then the attendance levels at the computer lab and monthly meetings, this suggests to me that there's a high level of engagement that members have with the club. And that's an important thing for us to take into account in our planning going forward. One other thing, and that is, since everyone uses their own computer for internet searching, email, or even finances, what additional things can we do as a leadership group to continually reinforce and remind you of safety, security, keeping your antivirus software up to date, avoiding tricky phishing websites, things like that? I know we remind you of that all the time, but since you're doing all this cool stuff as you should be with your own computers, as I say, investing or doing banking work, those kinds of things, that can leave you vulnerable. And what can we do to make that experience as risk-free as we all possibly can? And then the other thing is can we vary our communications and offerings to reach folks who are lighter users of the computer. How do we bring people in and let them know that we can work on things other than computers? And in my personal, I guess, practice within the computer lab is that so many people come in not with a computer problem or even a tablet problem, they've got a phone problem. And something's happened to it and they need help with that. And increasingly, we're seeing those kinds of questions coming in rather than sort of the main laptop or desktop computer issues that we would normally see. The next chart is to turn it over to Mike. But before we do that, I'll take any and all questions that you have about the survey or even any observations, and we'll limit this to maybe 4 or 5 minutes or so that we can keep on time. So, questions or comments from anybody?
Good job.
Great job. We'll have a microphone for you.
There you go. Anybody else got a question?
Very, very quickly, does the computer club help with YouTube presentations?
What do you have in mind by YouTube presentation? What are you thinking of?
Marketing oneself on YouTube. Creation.
I would say that's not something that, I've not had that question brought to me, but how about others in the lab? We've been asked to do things with creating YouTube videos for folks.
One right there.
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's one over here.
Go ahead, Red later.
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh, just 1 second. I don't think we provide that kind of service now. And I'm not sure, I mean, there's someone that has that kind of expertise. It might be good to inform the club that you have that expertise in other ways that we can make a reference to somebody like this. So I don't think it would be a continuous service, but it'd be great to have, and you'll see later, we will be creating an inventory of the skill sets of the lab techs. And if other members have skill sets, it not necessarily means you're going to be there as a lab tech, but it'd be nice to know that we would have a resource book where people could find one another. So we could serve as a hub of making references to one another. But people would have to come forward with that kind of skill set about creating YouTube videos.
Yes.
Just thinking, with everything going on, you know, we have a lot of things going on. We have a lot of equipment. Have you ever thought you could use more room?
Well, there's some discussion, I'll answer from what I know about it, which is not a lot. I know there's some discussion on how to repurpose the entire Meadowview Lodge. And I think it was a survey that went out and this First Service Residential sent something out. But I think Mike is going to take the answer to that question.
Yes, we were just recently contacted by the Strategic Planning Committee for the board, which is in charge of creating a plan for the renovation of Meadowview Lodge. We will be meeting with them, small group, we'll be meeting with them in about a week and a half to discuss this and to get our priorities represented. We're not sure of what the other competing interests are as far as using Meadowview, but we also will be having a special, I'll touch on this later, we're having a special board meeting next week to try to determine if we really have additional needs in space, and if we did get more space, how would we use it? How is the current space being used? We're trying to examine all those issues. So it's in play. We have been contacted, and our voice will be heard. This gentleman here has been waiting.
A related question to the YouTube question. Was there any interest in cord cutting and how that technology affects our lives?
Interested in what? I didn't hear what.
Cord cutting.
Oh, cord cutting.
Getting off of cable
Oh,
TV
cord
and
cutting, okay.
using the internet to stream.
I'll take that, is that the best way to do that would be to go to YouTube, put in Sun City Huntley Computer Club. They have a series of all the past presentations, and 3 months ago, Shelley did about an hour on all the ins and outs of cord cutting. If you do go to YouTube and find those prior presentations that Eric is up there right now recorded, please note that you can only get the audio into the system through the ambient sound. It's not a the CC button, which is closed captions, and it's actually pretty good and would make the experience far better if you use the closed captions. Maybe one or two more? That we- He's got a Green Bay Packers hat. Should we look at
Good morning, everybody. I'm an iPhone 14 user, and I've been through all the 5s and 7s and the whole list. My concern is, I'm interested in looking at an Android or 17 iPhone, and the issue is, there's so much new on the new phones, and the Apple computer people that I'm working with, they sometimes say, oh, you're okay with that. It does as much as the 16, but yet at the same time, they turn around and say, don't be more than 2 numbers behind. So I'm already now 3 numbers behind. The question is, if I go to a 17, I understand the processors are more involved and so forth, but it's also going to be, I'm going to have to have new chargers, new this, new that. And then the question is, which one of the 17s do I get? There's the Pro, and I don't do a lot of photo work, I just usually email and stuff like this off of this. I'd like to see some kind of a discussion, because it's now so current and they're pushing it so hard with Apple and Android and overseas chips and so forth, maybe before Christmas or shortly thereafter, because the phones are going to be on sale again, that we have something comparative to make some decisions. Because I'm in the midst of making a decision about whether I want to keep this or not. I suspect that there are others, and I know I'm being pushed by Apple to do it.
Mike, back to you.
I'll give a little short thing. I have an iPhone 12, it works fine. I've gone into this, the last one was a 6S. So I usually change phones when it's about a year or two from no longer being supported. We're not high-end users. And I think that even though I'm a very supportive Apple stockholder, and I hope they sell a ton of them, I don't think that I would resist their marketing until you find that you're not being able to do the things you would like to do. I think we do have a little lot.
One last question, one more from Cindy.
When you go to the meeting, will you be presenting the strategic planning on how many of our members actually go to the lab and why you would need a bigger one and maybe come to the main center of it?
Yes. This is exactly why we're doing this. First of all, let's thank Richard for a tremendous amount of work. I would hope that you would not share the professionalism of his presentation with anyone outside the computer club, because you want to keep him fresh for us and not share him with all the other people in the community. This was far superior to any of the surveys that generally come out of the general community. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so I have the next section, which is we had 2 open meetings to assess how the club is meeting member needs and identifying input. Now, the problem here we have is that we only have 14 members show up over two sessions. We had one on Monday evening and one on Tuesday morning. And that was a little disappointing, only 1%. It would have been nice, even if people thought things were wonderful, they just show up and tell us they're wonderful. But so therefore, the conclusions that we make are anecdotal. That is, they don't have the reliability of the conclusions from the survey that Richard just expressed, because we don't have a high sample size. Okay, so what we did get though, and this is commentary, is people would like to have a kind of a common area, a website. Our website is not robust. Matter of fact, almost none of the websites for clubs in Sun City are robust. And I'm going to be critical of the fact that we're stuck with this North Star database system that just wasn't designed to support those kinds of things. I want to be cautious about this because my experience with website development is that people are really enthusiastic about creating a website, less enthusiastic about maintaining it. And that's the real issue, okay? I always tell computer people when I was dealing with people, Ryan was being served by a computing center, that they were like railroad people. They like to build railroads, they don't like to maintain them. And they like to build systems, but maintenance is always a major issue. People would like to have some subgroups and messaging. Somebody mentioned that the photo group needs a high-resolution monitor, and that's good to know. The Apple users need a regular coordinator. And right now, you should be reflecting on the fact that Richard's survey said that there's a lot more expertise out there than you realize you are expert. So don't be afraid. I mean, I think it would be really pretty easy to be an Apple user coordinator. I have an idea that would make it easy if someone would step forward and say, hey, take this idea and run with it. There's a variety of reasons why I can't do that, to be the leader of the Apple users. By the way, I also think that one of the reasons we don't get as many Apple computers coming in to be fixed is because they work. I always remember watching a PBS series. It was a 6-part series by Robert Cringely, who was a writer for some tech magazine, and he did a series about the triumph of the nerds, it was called, and it was about the development of the PC through the 1980s. And he had one quote from Steve Jobs, who, by the way, Apple was kind of saved by Microsoft at one point. And he said, I have to respect Microsoft for its business acumen and its marketing skills. I just wish their products weren't so mediocre. Steve, give him a shot. They want to improve lab tech operations and consider a new club name. And this is something we're kind of looking at. Computer Club kind of reflects the way things were years ago. It doesn't encompass the universe of various technical applications and devices and things like that. Maybe Tech Made Easy, TechWise 55, the Test Club, the Technology Education Support, similar names. Where did I get these suggestions from? Anyone want to take a guess? I asked AI, so give me some suggestions for new names. I got about 20 of them. Not only did they give me about 20 suggestions, it gave me about 20 taglines, moving seniors into the new, having little marketing things. It was pretty good. Okay, so broader community issues. There's a charter, so this goes beyond the club. People commented that it's hard for residents to find stuff about clubs. And it's because you have to go 3 or 4 levels down into the Sun City application. You got to go sign in and then make sure you got the right tab, and then it's residents, then to charter clubs, and then to charter club. You go into a bunch of levels. My question is, and I will raise this question, is why isn't there on the front page of the SC application a button for charter clubs that leads right to websites that are much more robust than the ones we have? Let the minutes show that there was wide support for that suggestion.
Okay, one thing you can do is, just like any other website, you can bookmark the Computer Club webpage. If you're not logged in, when you click on that bookmark, it'll want you to log in, and I believe it'll take you right to the Computer Club webpage.
Okay, so I'll go through this last thing. So North Star comes up to some. We're not here to criticize North Star. We're just here to indicate that as far as the Computer Cloud operations, it is a limitation, and we're trying to find some workarounds for that. As a matter of fact, right now, if we keeping track of membership on North Star is difficult. We have a gentleman that created an access database to keep track of our membership, and I would like to transfer that into an Excel application. And I have found 2 people who are not members of the club who are willing to help with that transition. But we really need a membership coordinator. We need somebody who's willing to keep the membership list up to date. And all that we will require is a rudimentary familiarity with Excel. So if somebody would be willing to do that, please step up and talk to me afterwards. But we will be looking for somebody to do that, to keep our membership roles up to date. The prior coordinator is probably not going to be able to do that from this point forward. Okay, web building across clubs. There's a general, by the way, our concerns about volunteerism is a universal issue throughout the community and in much of our society. And lastly, one engagement with members willing to contribute. That has happened. We've contacted those 28 people who stepped up, and we've had some success by having one-on-one contact. And keep in mind that the services, whatever they are, whatever people desire, are limited by the human resources of those who are able to deliver them. So keep in mind, you have more expertise than you may realize. We realize that that lab, I'm not taking the energy here for the next section, that we need to make sure the lab techs are nurtured and brought in. And on that note, I'm going to turn this over to Jim Lingman, who will report on the lab tech luncheon and feedback.
Okay, so as a group, lab techs, we had a lunch meeting last Friday. 34 people were invited, 22 attended, you know, 3/4 of the group attended, very good. Here's some of the things that we did. John Sterling, would you stand up, please, John? We recognize John for his 25+ years to the computer club. What a great job John did. He was the coordinator. We have a new coordinator who volunteered, Jerry Knight. Jerry, would you please stand up? In listening to the lab techs and their comments, we realized we needed to get a skill matrix built. Well, what is a skill matrix? Well, I know this is going to be kind of hard to read again, but going across the top, it talks about Windows, Mac, iPhone, Android Watch, PC, things like that. And down the side is the lab tech names. And we're asking, this is a live, this was as of yesterday. We're asking our techs then to fill out where their expertise is. And then the goal of this is when you come in with an issue, our people will then look at the lab techs, what their skill set is, what their availability is, in an effort to get you served quickly and efficiently. So this is an ongoing process. Our team is completing this as we speak. We recognize that the position of a greeter when you come into the lab is important. So we have 3 people that have stepped up and said, hey, I'm going to be the greeter then. And Teresa Paulicki, standing up in the back, Ralph Waynes over here, and I'm not sure if Dave Fink is in the room. No, Dave is not here today. But those 3 will assume the role of greeters. Okay, we heard from the survey you would like more times. We've had a couple of our lab techs then step up and say, hey, we will go ahead and man additional hours for you. However, and I put however is a big one, there's limited support, and it's really for use of the lab equipment. If you've got a photo project that you're working on and you'd like to come and use the lab equipment, you can do it. But because we have opened up this meeting or changed the time of this meeting to 9 from 9:30, starting next month after this meeting, we will open the lab. We're going to go back over to the computer lab, 10:30-ish or whatever, and help you if you've got a problem with your devices or whatever. So next meeting, there will be open lab after this meeting. As a trial for the end of the year, Tuesday evenings, we will be open from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Also as a trial to the end of the year, Wednesday afternoons, the lab will be open from 1 to 4. Again, limited support, but you will have access to the lab equipment. Other things that came out of the meeting, we recognize the need for training, how we assign services, mentoring of our people, and we are working on these. Now, again, what Richard talked about in the survey is 28 people put down that they were willing to come and help us in the lab. Ralph Waynes and myself have contacted everybody on that list personally. 22 names have been given to Jerry as the new coordinator to gradually schedule in. Most people are 2 times a month, 6 hours a month, and you know, some are more, but thank you. They're excellent candidates. You can do it too. We do need the help. And as Mike alluded to, we have an urgent need for work on that Access database, Access/Excel database. So if you are familiar with the software program Access, please let us know. Thank you.
Yeah, and as far as that last point about being familiar with Access, don't worry about that too much. I think I have, like I said, recruited somebody who is very familiar with Access, and we really need somebody who's comfortable and not to a high extent with Excel, because I think we're going to try to examine whether it's worth transitioning from one to the other to make it simpler for more people to be able to use these programs. More people are familiar with Excel than Access, and that might simplify our lives a bit. But the need is real. So where do we go from here? First of all, I hope you feel assured that we'll be making some decisions about how to pull this all together. So what I will be doing tomorrow is pulling all this information into a draft strategic plan that I'll be sharing with about a dozen people who have been on the board leadership for a while, and a couple other invited people who said, I'm really interested in this kind of topic. And we'll be meeting next week and trying to fine tune what I developed as a draft into a solid strategic plan for the club going forward. And part of a strategic plan, of course, is deciding what we can do, what we can do well, and I'll come to that in a minute. We hope, the reason that we normally meet the 4th Tuesday of the month, so this is a special meeting next Tuesday, and that still gives us another 2 weeks. You have to give yourself a little time for things to percolate, for thoughts to come to your head while you're washing your hair. That's usually when they pop up. And say, oh no, it lets you know that your brain is working in the background. I call it the La Brea tar pits theory of consciousness. The little bubbles come up and go, boop, and all of a sudden you remember who sang that song from 1958. Oh yeah, it was Little Brenda Lee. That's exactly it. So, in any event, we would then have a final draft for the board to vote on at that point and to amend, and to assess what we can do with the current volunteer cohort. Now, as you have probably recognized by now, what can we do with our current staffing? What can we do with more staffing? Excuse me. So there is a cutoff there, and that's important to realize. So share this general draft. I'm going to go back to one last point. Create a reasonable implementation plan with contingencies. That is to say, well, whatever we do, we want to do well. If there are 8 things we want to do and we only have the resources to do 4 or 5, we're only going to do 4 or 5. That's the way it goes. You know, that's it. You know, kind of my dad was never do anything half, you know what I mean? So we're not going to do it halfway. We're going to either do it right or not do it at all. And that sometimes is disappointing to some people because they say, well, gee, I would like this, I would like that. And we have to put our resources where it has the greatest impact on the most members. So after that October 28th meeting via email, We're gonna send a draft plan out to everyone. There'll be an open discussion at the November meeting, member comments, maybe ask for your approval for a vote. I think we're gonna declare unilaterally that everybody that shows up for an in-person meeting is an automatic quorum. They tell us a quorum is 20%, there's no way we're getting 300 people to show up. So screw it, that's it, this is a quorum. If you care, show up, if you don't care, well, that's it. So we're gonna have member comments, we look for your input. Matter of fact, if you have input from the time you get the email with our plan before the meeting, that's really helpful, because it enables us to prepare responses or gather in more information based on what you think. Then we'll have a status of the plan and a sequencing and a timeline for 2026. So that's the general process at the moment, and I guess we can take a few questions before we adjourn. So anybody have any questions at all about where we stand and what our plans are? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Where'd you put your bike?
Is there any way to get a program inside the Sun City program that's just for the clubs?
That you're talking about using the database system that runs the community?
Yes, a subsystem of that, so you can just click on clubs and.
Yes, we do not control that. That is a board level issue.
Right.
And I'm not here to be a rabble rouser, but I'm encouraging the board that just as I encourage people that it's time to buy, maybe time to buy a new computer that will be good for the next 10 years, it's time to really look at a modern system that reaches the expectations of people who are fairly conversant with technology. And I don't understand where the reluctance is. So what I would suggest, my tactic has been to buttonhole individual board members with what I call the by the ways. You see them walking in the hall, and you say, hey, by the way, why do we have such an outdated thing? Now, I'm not trying to create trouble. I'm trying to create awareness. But I am trying to create trouble. Okay, Ralph called me on it. I'm trying to create trouble. I'm trying to create a critical mass of people who are commenting on this so they would get off the dime and let's get it done. Okay, because it's inhibiting a lot of operations that are difficult for various clubs. Not just this club, this goes into a wide variety.
There are other some cities that have.
Yes.
systems within that system.
There are.
That does the club count, the dues, everything, all there.
You're exactly right. There are 7,000 of these types of communities around the country. I'm willing to bet major league money that there's better systems out there than we have. Why not just copy them? That's what, yes, ma'am.
I don't remember hearing anything about the monthly newsletter. I really appreciate that. As it may be short, but for me, it has a lot of information, and I'd like to thank Frank for sending that out every month.
Yeah, Frank, I don't think I see it there. But I have to tell you, when you're doing something like this, having a guy like Frank is invaluable. I mean, the guy just takes care of things. He just gets it done. And there's no follow-up. He just does a terrific job. And I hope that people, when you see Frank, let him know that he was given a couple of kudos from the podium. Yeah. And then Fred.
Hi, Mike. I'm Dino Michelli. I'm the secretary of the Veterans Club here, and we're like in the top 5. And I concur that Mike and I talked about the email system there. It's terrible. It doesn't work real good. And the biggest problem is, if you opt out of any club email anywhere, you opt out of everything. That's a stupid thing they do, okay? And I'm not trying to curse at that much, but hey, we need to get together. I was going to suggest to you, pick the top 5 clubs. I know we're one of the 5, and maybe get together in a meeting, go to the board or go to Brian, he's a good guy, and suggest some of these things. Websites, absolutely, it's not bad, it's just very limited, right? And our email system, we found out that half the emails we were sending out, never got to anyone. They didn't know what was going on. So I switched and I said, hey, screw this. I like Mike when he talks. I'm not even from Jersey or anything, so I'm from Chicago. We get things done. Okay, so anyway, so we started a whole new email system. It's a free one. I told Mike, you might have to pay a little bit for it, but it works fantastic. So I agreed. So if we can get together with the groups, the top 5 clubs, we have over 300. You've got 1,000. I think the other clubs may have the same problem. So if we get a meeting, I'll be happy to join you on that.
Thank you. And we also got the pickleball club with 600 members that uses a different email system than North Star too. So like I said, maybe we can get to that. The question is, how much energy do you put in different things at the moment? Right now, our primary focus is our closed strategic plan. But this will be one of the things to address subsequent to that, and we have to find when we have the time and energy to really nail it. Good?
Hey, buried in the Sun City portal is the talk to the staff form. We inundated them with talk to the staff requests and that kind of thing. It goes right to the board, right to the director and everything. So we should do that and let them know where we all stand.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Now, I want you to be sure that you'll be getting a lot of information over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and I hope that you will read it carefully. I know that when you have an email, it's important to get to the bottom. All right. Sometimes I used to tease my staff. I said, anybody that read this far is getting a free beer tonight at the local tavern. I rarely had to pay for anything, but that's a good motto at the moment, and I hope you stay engaged. And like I said, you have more expertise than you realize. Richard's survey clearly indicated that. So be confident that if you do, if are willing to spare a few hours a month, not every Monday, Thursday, not every Wednesday evening, but maybe once a month or twice a month, we will make sure that you are nurtured, trained, feel confident, work with a mentor, all kinds of things that would introduce you into a level of comfort, and I think you will find the experience extremely rewarding. So on that note, I think we should adjourn and.
Wait, I want to just give a little bit about what we're going to do next Tuesday night at that meeting. How many here have photographs that have to be scanned? You don't have a scan. Come on in. This is the time. How many people have photographs that you have scanned, but you don't know what you did with them? Come in. We can tell you how to organize it. So let's think, and also tell your neighbors, anybody that you know that's in the computer club or not in, that when Tuesday night will be their opportunity to do something at the computer lab. And it was important that we try to get all those things together. You know, there's not enough time during the normal meetings on Monday and Thursday to get all that stuff done. So with it Wednesday afternoon and Tuesday evening, it will give you a chance to get all those pictures done, videotapes transferred, all that type of stuff that we do in the computer room that you can do when you need time to do it. So what we're doing is opening up in the evening and on Wednesday afternoon. So tell your neighbors too.
Yeah, it's not necessarily with, I have a problem with my iPhone. This is like, I have a project to do, and we have equipment and support people to help you at that point. So it's more of that type as opposed to the help sessions that are in the mornings, okay? All right, thanks, Frank. Thank you, everyone.